Okay, we're going to have a look at graphs today then. So we're going to start with bar graphs. Okay, this is your most basic kind of graph, a bar graph in this form, where you have a bar for each different category. For example, apple is one category, so you have one bar for that that goes up to whatever number it's going to represent. So this one's talking about people's favourite fruits. So the number of people said the nicest fruit was apple would be 35. Few different things I want to point out just about the bar graph. Firstly, your bars should all be the same width. Okay, there should be a gap between each of the different bars. If all the bars are right next to each other, it's technically a histogram, the difference being whether it is continuous or non-continuous data. A bar graph should be used for non-continuous data. There's no connection between an apple and an orange. You don't go for an apple and then get halfway in between an apple and an orange and then go for an orange. It's distinct. Whereas if you were talking about something like somebody growing, you'd want that to be continuous. With your continuous ones, we at Flamel like to use a line graph than a histogram, so we're not going to look at histograms at all. Okay, your bar graph should always have a space between them. Another few things, your bar graph should always be labelled. So down here, your axes are labelled with the kind of fruit. Up here, they're labelled with what it is and also with a nice even space scale. And your bar graph also needs a title. Okay, now regardless of what kind of bar graph we're looking at, it should always have all this information. Okay, the bar graphs get slightly more complicated, you will obviously have more information on there as well. Kind of questions you might get asked then about this is you might get asked how many people were asked in total. Okay, so we're looking at apple be 35, orange 30, banana is 10, kiwi fruits 25, blueberries 40, grapes 5. So if you were asked how many were in total, you would just be adding them up. So what would that be? 105, 110, 120, so it'd be 145 people. Or you might get asked what was the favourite fruit. Favourite fruit according to this would be blueberries. Or what's the least favourite fruit? Or you might get asked how many more people picked blueberries than grapes. So 40 people picked blueberries, 5 people picked grapes, so 35 more people picked blueberries than grapes. Okay, so lots of different questions you can get asked about a bar graph. Okay, now just so we are clear, I'm going to go over these points again. We've got another bar graph here, a slightly more complicated bar graph, just so that it includes absolutely everything. So these are the things that your bar graph must have. It must have its title. Okay, so you must have a title in there. This is this title here, sales by region. You must label your axes, so you must say what the axes are. You must have your scale on here as part of your axes being labelled as well, and these must be labelled as to what they are. And on a more complicated one like this, we also need a key. Okay, so the kind of questions won't change what you get asked about a bar graph, but the kind of bar graph can change. Okay. Here we've got comparative bar graph because we have two different things side by side. You'll notice again we've got our axes labelled, we've got our title, we've got our key. But this time, instead of just having one part for each section, we've got two. So this one's talking about the number of plant sales between A and Q and Mobies. You can guess what shops we're not allowed to use here. So we can now ask a comparison between shops as well as a comparison between the different plants. So you could say which shop sold more pansies, or how many more pansies were sold by A and Q. So lots of different questions there you can ask. What I'm interested in doing first with this graph is looking at the scale. So we're going up here. Each time we get to each time we get to one of these lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or the same way as I did before, you can count the sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 equal parts there, and that takes me up to 25. If I do 25 divided by 5, I get 5. So each section is worth 5. Once we know that, we can then answer some questions. So let's just do a couple of questions here. So the first one, let's say, which shop sold more petunias and by how much? Petunias, so we would say A&Q sold, and let's see how many. So A&Q sold, each one here is worth 5, so that'd be 55, 60, 65, 70. 70. Mobies sold is 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. Wasn't sure what line that 50 went to, goes to that one there. So Moby sold 55. So A&Q sold 15 more petunia. You might get asked as an overall comparison, which shop sold more plants, in which case you would need to add up both. Again, lots of various different questions that you can get asked about bar graphs. The important thing is that you can read that scale and you can understand the scale. If you can do that part, you can do the rest. Okay. One more then. Another bar graph here for us, or I should say one more of these kind of bar graphs. The bar graph here shows the percentage of the population in each wage bracket for 3 regions of the UK. So we've got our key here. So it's region A, region B, region C. We've got our title. We've got our axes labelled. Here we've got the frequency, in which case this is actually the percentage. We're told here it's the percentage. And our income in thousands of pounds is along the bottom. So we've got 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, and 40 or more. Okay, so which region had the highest frequency of those earning 30 to 40? So earning 30 to 40 is here. So we're looking for one which had the most. The one which had the most is this middle one here. The middle one is region B. Answer for that one would be region B. Part B, which 2 regions had 35% of the population earning from 10 to 20,000? 10 to 20,000 is this one. Yep, get rid of this red pen. We're looking for 35%. 35% would be here. So it's region A and C. Okay, last question then. In which regions, A, B or C, is the population least well off? Use the graph to justify your answer. Now, you should be able to get the answer just by having a quick look at the graph. You then want to look at it in more detail to justify your answer. Okay, so looking at it quickly, if you look at the regions here at the lower end, where they're earning less, C's higher, and here at the upper end, where they're earning more, C's lower. It's definitely region C. And if we start looking at it in more detail, if we look at this one, we've got 25% earn less than 10,000, another 35 earn just between 20 and 30,000. So we've got 60% of the population earn less than 20,000. If we compare that then, just looking at the less than 20,000 section, region B, just the one in between, we've got 10% here and 20% here. So 30% of the population. Sorry about my writing. This graphics tablet seems to... I'll try slowing down a bit. Earn less than 20,000. Now looking at region A, here we've got a 15 and a 35, so 50% of the population earn less than 20,000. So you can see that it is definitely region C here, because 60% of the population there are earning less than 20,000, which is a lot more than for region B or region A. Okay, different kind of bar graph then is a stacked bar graph. It's still a comparison bar graph, it's still comparing different things. Instead of it being side by side, it's one on top of the other. Okay, so this one is looking at the number of Z factor votes, and instead of a key, this one's written the different parts into it. Normally what you'd see is a key at the side, so the red would be Zuara, blue would be block, and so on. Now, when you're looking at this, it's important to note that block doesn't go from 0 up to here. Block just goes from the 30 to the 50. So block here would just be the 20,000 that it covers. Okay, Rex would just be the 5,000 that's in between here. Okay, it is just each part. Again, you can see a comparison with loads of different questions here because we've got the different countries, we've got the different groups, we've got the different numbers. Okay, start the same way as we have before. Let's look at the gap. So that's 1, 2 in 10,000. So if we do 10,000 divided by 2, each line there is worth 5,000 votes. Then we can ask a couple of questions. So let's look at, for our question, England. And let's say how many people voted for Rex. So how many people in England voted for Rex? Okay, so Rex starts here at 55,000 and goes up to 80,000. We do our 80,000, take away the 55,000. And we get 25,000. Okay, it's very easy to see using this kind of graph what the total amount of votes was. So we could very quickly answer a question like, what country was the most votes? That's obviously England, because it goes highest up. So regardless of who they have voted for, you can tell immediately that more people in England voted, which you can't do with a graph where it is side by side. Okay. You can also see very clearly, just looking at the size of them, where people were more popular. Okay. Lots of different comparison questions we can get asked about a bar graph like this. Once we can read that scale though, we should be quite confident in answering these questions. Okay. Okay, I just wanted to show you one last bar graph, and it is so that we could get this key at the side. You'll see this key at the side more often than you'll see the names written in on the different parts of the bar graph. So here we've got a bar graph talking about the sales of hats and shoes in a shop and over different months. So the question that was asked here was how many shoes were sold in January. Before we answer that question, let's have a look at our scale. Let's see what we're going up in. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 20 divided by 10 gives us 2, so each line is worth 2. So now we can answer our question. How many shoes were sold in January? Shoes is the orange one, it's this one here. So we're going to this line here, it's 20, 22, 24, 26. And that's where the 28 comes from. Okay. Let's ask a different question then. Let's ask something about the hats. Let's find out how many hats were sold in June. So we're looking at the number of hats sold in June. That line goes to here. I should have picked the one at the other end of the line, which is 11. So it goes up to 11 and it goes up to here. That's 20, 22, 24, 26. So 26 take away 11 gives us 15 hats sold in June. Okay, I'll leave you to try some bar graphs then. As ever, please get in touch if you have any issues.